This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, folks, and welcome. Rick here from Queen's College. Delighted to welcome you all to the session on Lenten and Easter Day liturgies that Father Boyd Morgan has worked on. This is actually just told me the completes the full cycle. He's done the 3 years, year B, year C, and now year A. So great resource to the church. They've been distributed to the 3 dioceses and available for use. So that's a great resource indeed. Some are attending, some will join in as we move through the session, no doubt. The session will be about an hour, and it's being recorded and will be available for anyone who'd like to view it as a recording. So welcome to those who will be viewing the recording as well. Just note, if you run into technical problems while we're on the session, just send an email to me every now and then. I will check my phone to see if I have any message, but everything seemed to be going hunky-dory a moment ago. We'll start the session. Father John Courage, our chaplain, will lead us in a prayer, and then Father Boyd will take over from there.
Creator God, from earliest days, people have gathered to offer your prayers and their praises, to offer to you the best worship that they could offer. We give you thanks that we continue that traditions now. And we give you thanks for the work that Father Boyd has prepared for us for these last 3 years. We ask your blessing upon us now as we prepare for this Lent, a time of penitential and self-discipline and sacrifice, but also a time of great and worthy praise of you. Continue that blessing, we ask, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Folks, before Father Boyd starts, I'll just ask you all to, if you'd mute yourself, that is, turn off your microphone and then turn it on when you have a comment or a question. Go ahead.
Okay, can I sit here?
Yeah.
Good morning to you all, and I'm glad to be here for sure. For this session, if you have in front of you or available to you material that's been sent out, and that would include the general introduction and rationale to trial services. That's one handout. Then with that, there was the rationale for the Sundays in Lent, and also the one for Easter Day. And the third thing is all the liturgies. So that would be Easter Day, as well as all the Sundays in Lent. And what I thought I would do is just travel through them, not a word for word, but pick up on some of the general stuff that you may be interested in. One resource that will really be required for you to have is on the Anglican Church of Canada national website, there's Becoming the Story We Tell. Now, that is a huge document. Can I see this here?
Yeah, if I hold it up.
Okay, I'm going to hold up. It's well over 400 pages. Now, in my world, I have to have it in front of me. I can't work well with it because there's so much. This is an invaluable resource. 400 and some pages. You will also need it for the gospel readings. So if you haven't got it, you need to get in on the website and get it. And it's called Becoming the Story We Tell, and was updated in January 2019. And it's for the year A, B, and C. And you will find resources for homilies, you will find resources for prayers, and you'll find resources for biblical work that you may want to do, even courses. Now, that is going to be really necessary for you to have access to, either to work online with it or to print out a copy and photocopy from that. And with regard to what we're going to do today, what I would like to do is I'll run through this material. Then if anybody has a question or a comment, it doesn't got to be a question, it can be a comment. I'd like to hear from you. But before the session is over, I'd like to hear from everybody. So we'll check in with everybody. So now,
I'm just going to ask, Nat, if you turn off your camera, because it's being recorded, it's only, we only record a presenter. You turn off your webcam. Great, thank you.
okay. The first point I want to make is that what I have done here is really the work of one person and others that I have brought on board with me. It's not to supersede the Book of Alternative Services or to plant dissension in the church. It's just one person working with the liturgy of the church, and all the material that I use really comes from national churches approved materials, the Church of England or the United States or from Canada. We have a tremendous amount of material that we're not using. What happens is when we don't use and introduce material into our Sunday liturgies, after a while, things start to get a bit stagnant. That happens. And when we arrived at the Book of Alternative Services in 1985, we can turn that into a prayer book in the sense that if we do nothing more with it, it will just fade and the liturgy won't challenge us. So my concern was to work with the liturgies, to keep on thinking about the liturgies, and asking the questions about the liturgies. Now, for people who take it to do, you have to take the material and make it work for you. I think that's the important thing. What I have done is not sort of something that everybody can take and use. You have to take it and use it in your own situation. So really, on the looking, if you have the introduction and rationale, you'll notice that I've used materials. I've cited materials that I've used. There are some good websites, some very good websites out there, and I encourage you to use them. I've also used the Lutheran material, and in the Anglican Church of Canada, we're allowed to use the Lutheran material freely. I've used the English material, and I've used the Canadian material and some American material. And now the other thing is, anything that I have worked with, you will see ALT written beside it if I've had to change it. But, and I've also recommended to all of you Paul Gibson's book, Make Preparation. On the West Coast, certainly in your area, Vernon, Father Bill Bellamy is in Pasadena, and he's a great liturgical resource for you because he's also been my proofreader for all this material. So he knows this material as well. So if any of you in the gang out there want to make use of him, you really should think about doing that. Now, looking at Lent, the Sundays in Lent. The real thrust of Lent in year A is the baptismal covenant. Every Sunday you go through it, and Easter Day you affirm it, reaffirm. Now this is why this resource, coming the story we tell, is so important, because this is where that focus is on. When you look at the liturgies, you're going to see that they're different, certainly, than the Advent ones. And they're framed in a certain way. If you looking at the whole liturgy now for the Sundays in Lent, what you'll find that in the beginning at the gathering, you will have a statement about what Lent is. And that comes out of the Ash Wednesday exhortation. Because what happens is people may come on Ash Wednesday, they may not. But in the present arrangement, if they don't come on Ash Wednesday, they never hear what Lent is about. So by continuing it every Sunday, you reestablish it for those who are coming and those who may only come occasionally. Also in the gathering, you'll find every Sunday there's a declaration, the Kyries. And what the Kyries do is, in that part of the liturgy, the Kyries are saying that our human nature is such that we are prone to sin or break our relationship with God, or turn against God, or however you want to characterize it theologically. So that's a part of our human nature. So we put that up front. Now, continuing in that, then we come to the next statement about that. It's going to come for the confession. After the prayers of the people, it's going to come to confession. That's the point where we recite the individual sins that we have committed. So we have own up to the individual sins. And then the third part of that picture comes at the very end. Just before the blessing or about the blessing, where we say, you can be assured that having acknowledged the fact of sin, having acknowledged our sin, the third thing at the end is that God forgives those who repent. So in other words, with us, it's not the black picture that we have at the beginning, but it's the bright picture at the end. That's what frames the Lenten liturgies, so that we acknowledge, we confess, we are reassured by God. Now, you will notice that there isn't a creed, and that's deliberate. There's not a creed because we want to have the creed for Easter Day. We don't want to do it before because we want to sum up all what goes on during Lent in that creed when we reaffirm our baptismal faith. Let me just say for a minute the word reaffirm. Sometimes we say renew. I'm not so sure in English that renew is a good word for us, because if you go and renew your license, somebody renews it for you. You just pass it in your bit, or you type it in on the screen or whatever. Somebody will do that and pass it back to you. That's not what we want to say about the baptismal covenant, because we take it on ourselves. We do the affirmation. So I think the word reaffirm is a stronger word in English than the word, even though you will find it used otherwise, but I think reaffirm is a better word. Then when it comes to the confession absolution, every week we do the baptismal covenant. Now, if you're presiding, it would be better for you to have somebody do the prayers of the people, and then the presider take the confession absolution. Because if you've got one person's voice doing all of that, the confession, the intercessions and the confession, it's all going to run together. You don't want it to run together. You want to separate it so that one person does the prayers, the other person leads in the confession. That's just our human nature. The thing as well I draw your attention to is that the prayer at the presentation of the gifts, one time, and this is a bit of myself coming out now in this, but the prayer over the gifts is the Eucharistic prayer. That's the prayer over the gifts. Theologically, that's the prayer everything is focused on. The prayer at the presentation of the gifts is a different prayer. It's a prayer about gathering the gifts, or about the people who are gathering the gifts, or where they're coming from, or what they're about. But it's not the great Eucharistic prayer is the gift prayer over the gifts. Now, the Eucharistic prayer is one that's not used very much, and it has an element of confession and lament. And you'll find that I've used it for all the Sundays in Lent. It's a good prayer. It's very biblical prayer. And then the Lord's Prayer. Well, now, the Lord's Prayer. I don't always hear very much how the liturgies in year A, B, and C, how they go over. I'm always interested, but I don't really, and people, I don't know if they don't want to upset me, but they can't upset me because I'm already on the pension plan. So, it's not possible to upset anybody if you're on the pension plan. So, but the one part of the liturgy that often draws fire for Anglicans is the Lord's Prayer. Now, there's two versions of the contemporary Lord's Prayer. There's the one in the VAS, and there's the one that they use in the Church of England. In Lent A, I thought we'd go with the one in the Church of England to give the one in the VAS a bit of a break. But we as Anglicans have got to get in our minds and our souls a contemporary Lord's Prayer. First of all, it's a clearer prayer, much, much clearer. But the other thing, we need that prayer. So when we go where other Christians are, at least we can say a contemporary version of prayer. The old prayer is beautiful. It's a bit of English prose. It's beautiful, but don't pay too great a price for your prose. The other contemporary one is fast and it's direct, and if everybody would start to use that, and if people complain, that may be a good thing. Don't worry about that.
So, what if I can ask, what is the distinction between the Book of Alternative Services and the English one?
Okay, the Book of Alternative Services says, deliver us from the time of trial. And a lot of people had trouble with that phrase, deliver us from the trial. What does that mean? But the English says, lead us not into temptation. And it's kind of back to the other one. And that's what it was done, to see if we could hit some kind of a compromise. Because there was a lot of backlash. Lead us from the time of trial. Like people, there was a whole issue, like, shouldn't we be led to the time of trial? And why spare us from the time of trial? And then, if you're trying to put something down, you'll always find a reason.
Yes.
But it goes back closer to the original. And it's more biblical. The contemporary ones are more biblical. But we should as Anglicans be saying and learning and be confronted by a contemporary one, if for no other reason, and not only, but when we go where other Christians are, we can say the Lord's Prayer together. The breaking of the bread, I've made a big thing of this. The breaking of the bread doesn't need any words whatsoever. The breaking of the bread is a utilitarian action. And one of the things that happened in the prayer book tradition is that the breaking of the bread was put in the Eucharistic prayer, prayer of consecration, which meant that it was lost. And we put all kinds of hocus pocus around it. And it took on a life that a magical life, which it really ought not to have. In the early period of the church, we know that the four actions were the taking of the bread and the wine, the blessing of God said over the prayers, the prayer over the bread and wine, the breaking of the bread, and then the distribution. And they use real bread. So if you got a loaf of bread and you got 100 people, you had to break the bread. And that became an action, a utilitarian action. And it is, to properly do it, you actually break all the bread, have it done, over with, then you say the words. Other than that, you cover up the action with the words, and we don't want that. Even if you have those nice big hosts, which, as one Roman Catholic scholar once said, I don't have any trouble understanding Jesus under the form of the bread. He said, my trouble is trying to convince me that that is actually bread. It's true. It's true. I mean, it doesn't look right, but so there, but that happened, Very interesting how that happened in the church. But we're not going to get into that.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And that is, because I notice a difference in practice by presumpters, that some break the bread at the time of consecration when they say, this is the bread that they broken, and they break it in that moment. Others don't do that. By my own, studies, I understood always that that ought not to be done. But anyway, what's the practice and what's the rationale?
The practice is, the proper practice is the breaking of the bread is seen to be a communal action, which is a significant part of the liturgy. And it's one of the fourfold actions, taking and blessing God, because it's not blessing the bread, it's blessing God, and that's what blesses the bread. And then you break the bread. In the prayer book tradition, it was mandated that you broke the bread in the prayer. And that became then it was no longer about breaking bread, but it suddenly became about magic. And so Jesus wasn't present and broke bread, and then he was. But then you reduce good liturgy then to magic. And actually the Latin for all of that is hocus pocus. So that was that. And so when we got back to the original roots of the church, what we found out is that wasn't a part of that at all. The action was taken as a community action that involved the community. And to do it today, nobody should be breaking the bread in the Eucharistic Prayer, in the BAS, or any contemporary liturgy. The real rub comes is if you do the prayer book, should you do it? Now, there are some of us who feel strongly enough. I won't do it myself because I think we're just going back again. But I suppose to technically do what you would, but there's too many battles over this, the breaking of the bread, to put it back in the Eucharistic prayer again. It needs to stay out and be an action. It is an action of the community, the same as the other three actions are actions of the community. Yeah. So I've made a bit about that, and then the communion. The communion. There's something I want to suggest to people is that when you're passing the chalice, you pass the chalice, and I learned, you learn this stuff the hard way sometimes. When you pass the chalice, it's always better to say, the body of our Lord Jesus Christ, or the blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. First, pass the chalice so the person says, Amen. Then you pass the chalice. Because if you pass it and somebody wants to say Amen, actually they have now consumed from the chalice and they really can't say Amen. So the action is the body of our Lord Jesus Christ or the blood of Christ. Then the person says Amen. then you pass the chalice. And if you make yourself do that, you'll find that people, because what you're doing is that you're pushing the chalice at them and you're saying the words. And I think there's a better way to do it. It's cleaner, and it gives them a chance to say Amen before they consume. Yeah. Now,
part of that problem,
yeah.
or not the problem, but that
Yeah.
is we have to teach our lay people
Absolutely.
who administer communion to hold back,
Mhm.
right? You know, because,
Yeah.
you know, they're trying to keep up. Generally, the priest gives out the host.
Right.
And so they're trying to keep up, you know, at least be 3 or 4 behind
Yeah.
him,
Yeah.
right? And instead of having this distance.
Yeah.
So the presider needs to slow down in
Yeah.
distribution.
Yeah.
So that the others can,
That's right.
you can do it, right? Because I've seen when you're quarter way through the rail and the presider is finished and is waiting for you to get going, you know, like
There's a lot more sensitivity needs to be done in that action.
it works better when people stand to
Absolutely.
receive, you know, a
Absolutely.
Catholic tradition or some
Yes,
Anglican stuff.
absolutely. It's far better for people as standing, far better. And I think that the Roman Catholic Church is really led off in that.
Yeah.
And now their theology is the whole issue of pilgrimage. You know, now when I was at Notre Dame University, we were all invited to be a part of the Eucharistic community because we were part of the university community. And the line, the single line of people walking up, there's something wonderful about that. There's something really moving about it.
I never knew that before, though, but that's, I never knew that before, that the sense of pilgrimage.
Yeah, now that's where they come from.
But see, but that's a great teaching tool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
That could
And-
do away with the rail.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and in the Roman Catholic Church, they take it serious because quite often right after communion, they go, keep on going.
That's right.
That's
Keep
right.
on
The
going. Yeah,
pilgrimage-
that's
and
it.
they're
Yeah,
going-
why stop now? Yeah,
Go on.
yeah. But also, you know, and we complicate things sometimes, but we come out of that tradition with the altar rail, and everybody knows why that was put there, to keep the dogs and cats from the altar, right? So we put it and we do it in beautiful,
Yeah.
but boy, it really hinders you. But it's a wonderful sight. It's just a movement. It's the movement. But it's not a bad thing for the presider and Eucharistic assistants to meet from time to time and to reflect on what's going on.
Another practical thing
Yeah,
that I'd like you to take a moment on is whether or not it's preference
Yeah.
to have the communicant take the cup,
Mm.
or should it be held for them, or is it a matter of, you know, whatever the person wants to do?
that's a very difficult question because technically we've always held a cup. But now you're finding more people. There's always a risk when you let the cup go. And this is a long time ago, but when I was a student in England, I was in England for a year. My project, I worked in Canterbury Prison with 400 men for nearly a year. And we had a mass every Sunday. You wouldn't let the chalice go because of the, I mean, it all, but you know, if you let the chalice go, you're not left for the next fella. Right? The prison was dry at that time. And so the chaplain used to always say to us, don't let the chalice go. Hang on to the chalice. So, but anyway, now most parishes we don't treat like prisoners, I suppose. But there's a sense in which, you know, like if you can hinge it at all, there are some people that like, I prefer to take the, if I'm in a congregation, I come up for my communion, I prefer to take the chalice. But if the person won't let go, that's fine. But it really varies. Now, some people have been, Anglicans have been taught to drop their heads. But the worst thing you can do is when you're trying to communicate, somebody in their head drops.
Yeah.
But no, just in a general way, I think presiders and Eucharistic assistants need to do more talking about that action. how do we do this? And even like, well, why not say to the presider, why are you going so fast? I can't keep up with you. Yeah. But it really varies. The rough thing is, now it's only for you because you're tall, but if you're standing and you've got somebody like me, you know, you got to let the chalice go because you can't see them.
Yeah.
So it really varies. And that's why if I do the chalice and people are standing, I'll go to a step because that's the only way I can see. Because some people won't take the chalice. But I find, I don't know how you find, but,
Are you suggesting I'm shorter than you or taller?
no, we know that you are. That's true.
It is a challenge when you're going around here and you have three
Yes.
up there and you're down here,
Yeah,
give them the call.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Paid like a prisoner.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Right?
but it's a good point. But you know, we need to talk more about that.
Just as a curiosity,
Yeah.
and I'm sure many in the Anglican Church now would be like myself in that there was a time when there was a practice established in the BCP that they don't remember because it was a generation of it being the regular way. But like in the Roman Catholic Church, up till after Vatican Council, very few went to Holy Communion.
Right.
So the way of managing Holy Communion was in fact, that's part of the reason why the blessing at the end of Mass was more elaborate, because most people went and they witnessed the Eucharist, but they didn't receive.
That's right.
Because you were in a state of sin, you go to confession, no more than, a day before, right? That was the practice, wasn't the official teaching on it, but certainly what was hammered home. So then the logistics, we might say, of managing communion and so on was all together at that time, and the rail and all was there. After Vatican II, and it was, I suppose, nothing short of a miracle how so many of the changes were embraced and not resisted. And so taking out the rails and turning the altar around and all that became just a way of doing it, which was interesting. But was that tradition there in the Anglican, for Anglicans as well, that, everyone didn't go to communion as it is today?
Yeah. I tell you what, really influenced Anglican Eucharistic spirituality.
Oh, Carol, yeah.
I can wait for Rick to come back for that.
You'll hear it on tape.
Will you hear it on tape? Okay. What has really influenced Anglican Eucharistic spirituality was fasting. It's all about fasting. People don't realize that now the tradition that I grew up in, St. Michael's, we had a Eucharist at 8 o'clock. If you wanted to make your communion, you went at 8 o'clock. And then 11 o'clock was a solemn high mass that nobody received. Absolutely nobody. And I'm talking about the days when, you have 400 or 500 on a Sunday morning at St. Michael's, like St. Mary's.
Or what would St. Mary's?
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
So just making the point that the thing that influenced Anglican Eucharistic piety and spirituality the most was fasting. Right? So we didn't have evening communions. I was on the Labrador coast and I had evening prayer every evening and 8:30 the next morning, Holy Communion. And that was the way. Never would do an evening communion.
No.
Now, by the time I got to the end of it, it was easy to do because, like we would go and warm up this school. We used schools and it was very cold. Then they all would come back the next morning. Like it didn't make sense, but it was about fasting.
Yeah.
And as people's discipline of fasting sort of is dampened, then you could do the evening communions and even like when we be doing house communions, going to people's homes, like for sick, you only could do it until middle of the day, or you do 3 in the morning or something like that. But the issue was fasting, but now it's not.
No.
And Eucharistic piety now has changed. Fasting is no longer. I can remember like the midnight mass for Christmas was 11:30. Why? Because the consecration took place after 12 o'clock the next day.
Oh, yeah.
And so we weren't allowed to go to Mass on Christmas Eve. We couldn't eat after 9 o'clock. So here's the whole family out in the kitchen, fridge, door open and everything else. And you've got 3 more minutes to get this done. Because, you know, like tonight, you won't be able to make your communion.
Oh, yeah.
And we were serious, but that's not there now.
No.
Now, the generation of my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, they would have no concept. You wouldn't be able to talk to them about that. But today, it's a totally different picture. So I don't know how I got onto that, but
Next question.
yeah, but that's how it came about.
Yeah.
It had more to do, because I grew up at St. Michael's. 8 o'clock, everybody went, that made their communion. 11 o'clock, 300, 400, 500 people, solemn high mass, nobody. Well, if you went off, you wouldn't get out of the building.
No.
Who does he think he is?
Right? At St. Mary's, it would be older people and they would have skipped
Oh,
breakfast, right? You know, but and us young ones, if one of us was brazen enough even to go up to the rail, can't bad and just skip over it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Or if you wore lipstick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Women wore lipstick in those days. Bang, bang, click, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh. But now, the discipline of fasting is not seen now as a barrier. And the other thing that broke it down, I think what broke it down, and how much time?
We got another 25 minutes.
What broke it down is after World War I, things really changed and the parish communion movement began. That's when Anglican liturgical piety changed in this century, was with World War I. That's a wonderful topic. And the chaplains who came back from World War I, they were the ones who confronted the church with what was going on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Interesting.
yeah. But anyway, we won't get into that because that's a full credit course. Now, and then, in actual fact now, if a person theologically makes his or her communion, there's no need of a blessing. This is back to the point you made. The blessing is in the communion that you consume, the eating. And you're right, like back in the Reformation Church and before the Reformation Church, it was about even seeing the elevation of the host, ringing the bells.
Oh, yeah.
And the elevation of the host. You couldn't communicate because that was too sacred and you were too sinful. And even now, back to the bread. The bread was made to look like anything but bread because it was made by nuns and monks, celibates in monasteries.
Yeah.
So even the bread was extraordinary.
Yeah.
But that's how that came about.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, look around in Presentia Bay in places I was stationed, every parish had a little host press.
yeah.
And it would batter, be mixed up and then it'd be heated up on the stove and every press. But so few people were going to communion.
Yeah, even in those days.
It wasn't a practice. No, it wasn't a practice in my time.
Yeah.
But they were still there as part of the,
Oh, sure, yeah.
you know, the artifacts, you might say, from days gone by. By the time I was there, you know, it was, all that stuff was provided. People were going to communion, you know, everyone was going.
And things happened when we started to get into communions after 12 o'clock in the day. That changed everything. And multi-point parishes. That broke it down too.
Yeah.
Because but your diet of a Sunday was before 12, Eucharist, after 12, non-Eucharist.
Yeah.
Anyway, these are all very good questions. I don't need to spend a lot of time because you can read this yourselves. The thing that I want to bring to your attention, is this a good time just to go around and see if anybody's got it?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Can you do that?
Yeah, okay, so we have online with us, we have Faye.
Oh, Faye.
Welcome, Faye. and Greg, and we have Ned, and we have Tracy and Vernon. So we'll take a moment, probably start with you. Faye, any question or comment? I know you joined a little bit late, but great to have you with us. Any question or comment, Father Boyd?
No, just I came on a little bit late just to sit and listen. And of course, always enjoying Father Boyd.
Nice to go. Nice to hear your voice, Faye.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thanks, Faye. Greg, any comment from yourself or questions?
No, very good points being made. I like what Father Boyd said at the beginning, that by making little changes liturgically, and that it enables us to look at it in a refreshed way, and gets us to contemplate the Eucharist and look at it from a different lens and different facets. And I think that's really worthwhile in our at looking at the Eucharist and at the prayers that we do.
Great, thanks, Greg. Great. Ned, anything from you? Ned?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was so absorbed into what he's saying, I kind of lost track. This is a very interesting. Thank you very much, Dr. Morgan. I really appreciate it.
Ned, I was in Mary's Harbour, which is not far from you. You're in Porto, are you?
Yes.
Yeah,
I quickly. Go ahead.
I was in Mary's Harbour for nearly, 3.5 years, back after World War II, but it was a long time ago. Very different now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. When you said you were in Labrador, I jumped up and pulled out some of my records here to see if I could find your name, but I don't think you did anything in this parish.
No, I wasn't. No, and in actual fact, you couldn't travel between Porto and Mary's Harbour then. You'd have to go by steamer.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I used to come up as far as Henley Harbour.
Henley Harbour. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now there's nobody living there now.
No.
Your only record of him will be on correspondence about Queen's College Appeal.
That is, yeah.
Tracy, questions or comments?
No, just taking it all in, but I did get a little chuckle when we talked about the chalice and being short, because I always have a challenge when I'm giving the chalice to you, Dr. Rick.
Yeah,
And Eli, of course.
But Tracy.
And Eli as well. I always struggle with it.
Yeah, but great things come in small packages. Just think of a diamond ring.
that's right.
That's what we're like.
Exactly. Indeed.
Well, you know the rest of that, don't you?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yes, and so does poison come in small.
Yeah, we'll keep that in mind, Tracy. I'll get down on one knee when you come along to me, if you want me to. Vernon,
Perfect. Seems like a plan.
Vernon, any questions or comments?
I'm really enjoying it. I noticed though we was talking about the communion rail, and one of the 6 churches up in Flowers Cove, Green Island, we don't have a communion rail.
Didn't. Was that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So was that a church that was recently built or was it taken out? Do you know?
It's fairly new, but 20 years old, I guess. It's not very old. Yeah. But it was never put there, no. I wouldn't hear it from the beginning.
Good.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying the session.
Thank you, Vernon.
Yeah,
Vernon,
you're welcome.
where are you now? I know you're at the other end of this, but what community are you in now? What parish are you in?
Flowers Cove.
Oh, because when I saw you before, you were up at King Ray somewhere, weren't you?
Yes, but I moved after.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm deacon in charge at Flowers Cove.
Perfect. Good.
Yeah.
We'll do well for you. Good. Now, Deborah just joined us. I think, Deborah, we're just checking if anyone has any questions or comments. Okay.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Welcome aboard. Yeah.
Now, folks, because the time is getting on, what I want to do with you is all this other stuff you can read and all that. Can you see me? Where am I? Am I there? Here at the college, they take the liturgies and put them on 1, 2, 3, 4 sheets, double-sided, folded like a bulletin. And if you can do that, it's a really smart way to do it. And the thing is with it, it's very presentable. People can take it home with them. It's going to need to be stapled. It's 4 sheets of paper. I think you could probably do it on 3 if you really push. But all the lines are the same. Be sure to keep the sense lines the same. So that's the lines that people read so that they get the flow of the liturgy. And they've done it here at the college with 4 sheets of paper. And I got to tell you, I think it's one of the nicest ways that I've seen it done.
That's presider.
And then the regular one that you find that it comes to you electronically is the presider's copy, like this here. And that comes. But if you take the presider's copy, you can actually reduce it down to a bulletin, and it really looks good, and people can take it home with them. Now, the big change, or one of the changes in what we have here, is Passion Sunday with the Liturgy of the Palms. It's a little bit different, and I just want to take you through that. The 4, 5 Sundays before that is basically one Sunday, 5 Sundays done one way, and that gives continuity. You don't want to get into gimmicks. You don't want to be giving people gimmicks, but you want to be solid. You want to build on what's solid. So, but the Palm Sunday is different. Now, if you go to Palm Sunday, you will notice that there's no introduction of palms at the beginning. There is a short gospel. It's not the regular one we use for Palm Sunday. There's an affirmation of faith and prayer to the people, everything. And then you get over to the very end. And after people have made their communion and gone back to their places, in other words, where the prayer after communion and where the dismissal would be, this is where the liturgy of the palms occurred. And what you notice is that up to now, the liturgy is solemn, it's about the passion, but it changes now with the liturgy of the palms. There is an exhortation. I love exhortations, but there is an exhortation telling you, as all exhortations, same thing in the prayer book, dearly beloved, this is what's going to happen next. That's how Cranmer saw it. When you open up to a liturgy, dearly beloved brethren, in those days, dearly beloved brethren, you say what a marriage is going to be, or you're going to say what morning prayer is going to be, or whatever. So having an exhortation is not a bad thing. So you have your exhortation, and it talks about, during that we have been preparing for the celebration of the Lord's Paschal Mystery. And then we're going to talk about what happened on Palm Sunday, how he entered into the Jerusalem, what he did. He went and he knew his time was coming to an end. He had to. He was facing down the authorities, and he went into Jerusalem to do battle with them. And so that entrance is a triumphal entrance, and we greet Jesus as King. So then the palms are given out. So you give out the palms. And then, rather than bless the palms and give them out, what I'm suggesting is that you give out the palms and then ask everybody to raise their palm and then say the blessing. Then say the blessing. And there's a prayer there for that. And then there's a hymn. And the hymn is to be a triumphal hymn about Palm Sunday. So what you're doing is you're starting off Holy Week. And what you're doing is changing from Passion Sunday into the triumph of Palm Sunday, and then they leave. Then they go with their palms, singing a triumphal hymn, and then there's a bright, short dismissal and out through the door. It's another way to do it, because what happens is when you do the palms up front, you really lose the force of it for leaving, because it really should be about the leaving and rather about coming together. I know that sounds contradictory, but think about it. And if you take that, you just, and then go out on a good hymn, go out on a triumphal hymn. If you can't sing All Glory, Laud, and Honor, something like that. Don't sing Abide With Me, because you won't. And then if you're going to do a procession with the choir, usually people in Anglicanism love to dress up and walk around. And bishops have been doing it for centuries. So if you want them to do that, you know, if you want to have a procession during that last hymn, before the dismissal, after the palms are blessed, then have your procession and have them go around the church and come right back to the door. Then do your dismissal. Don't let them go out without the dismissal. But do all, you know, that's when people are going to be pretty well tired listening to you by then. So you sort of bring up the pace a bit, and you do the, not many people do that, but don't worry about that. But where I have seen it done, it's gone over well.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Particularly because we haven't been doing processions very well in recent years. But that this is an excellent opportunity to come down from the altar,
Right.
to go down the one side,
Right.
go right across the back, up the other side,
Right.
and process out the door through the middle.
Right.
Right? You know,
Absolutely.
and that's a good procession.
Yeah. And when you come down to go out, always go to your left first.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, in Anglicanism, processions that from looking down from the altar, processions that were triumphant, you turn to your left, and processions that were with repentance, like the litanies and things like that, you turn to your right. Right? That was the distinction. So when the procession started to come, you knew this was a happy day or a sad day, whichever way you turned. Yeah. So
For clarification, you're saying coming from the altar.
coming, so looking down,
Yes.
looking down.
From the altar.
Yeah. And
Left is joyful, right is sad.
that's right. Yeah. So now, with regard to that, you know, processions are great. Processions are great. Don't underestimate them. It gets everybody moving, their blood going, and if you've got your palm crosses and all that sort of stuff. Now, I find it difficult to walk and chew gum. So, you know, that's always my problem with procession. These are, you know, you're bouncing out to him as you're trying to walk and not trip up in something. But you can do it. You can do it. I've never seen anybody yet trip and fall. But I really think, and you know, if you have to go to your congregation, just ask them to trust you. Like, you're going to do it this way this time, and there's this crazy guy in St. John's who said this. Now that'll fix it. On the West Coast, anything comes out of St. John's is not really good anyway. I know that. But if you get them just to trust you, now get your choir, get your Eucharistic assistants, get whomever you got, and have a little go through first. Don't do it just dry. Just have a little go through first so everybody knows what you're doing. And I'm going to tell you, you'll probably, well, you know, if you don't try, you'll never know. Anyway,
I might just mention that one of the advantages for those who are here, those who are recording this to bear in mind that this is available to you, this recording, and so it can be helpful to your liturgy committee or those who need to be informed to know what the rationale is. The material has the rationale for liturgies. And that's usually very helpful in introducing change when people understand why it's being done rather than it's because someone doesn't like doing it one way or another. Whatever the reasons.
Can I ask a question about the scripture, the gospel readings? Because
good.
like it's easy to get a few people to say it, but as time goes on, it gets more and more, and from different places in the church.
Yeah.
So you want to speak a little bit on that?
Well, there is something that you got to work at, and that's not going to work everywhere. See, where Vernon is, some of the places Vernon got, that's not going to work for Vernon. Now that may work in the Channel. Faye, I think are you in Channel, Faye? She's probably gone again. Anyway.
No, I'm in Channel Port Bass, but I'm in the parish of Grand Bay.
Okay, I thought you were in that big church in Port Bass.
St. James.
St. James. But
No.
that's okay. But anyway,
That is my own. Okay.
Okay, but that's good. I know you're down there somewhere. But the point I want to make is, you know, like that may work in Channel, but it's not going to work in Green Island Cove. Right? So you got to make it work. Now, some people may say, I'm just going to have one person do it. And it may be the presider, I don't know. But somebody may be in a situation, they can take some of this and really, like sometimes the Corner Brook or here, because I know there's a couple of priests that I know I had as students could take something like that and twist that around and make it some, you know. So the question that you're asking is an excellent question. And some Sundays it may work, and then as you get like 10 and 11, you may just have to say, no, I can't do it, you know. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's what I was thinking. It's easier when you have a smaller number.
Yeah.
But that when you start getting, because they got to be on cue.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
You know, and you know, people are like, and all of a sudden they say, oh my gosh, my turn, right? You know,
Yeah, no, there's a very practical part to this.
It's a lot of work got to go through.
And I tell you now, when I was doing this, right, and I was thinking about, you know, the foreclosures of this life and the cathedrals of this life and the corner brooks of this life. And I said to myself, no, I don't think we should step back from it because everybody can't do it. Doesn't mean that one or two can't do it. But if they can capture the intent of it, now I know there's a lot of reading there. Now the other point about the gospel that you mentioned, but that I forgot, but you reminded me, is that on the Passion Sunday, instead of having the long gospel, have the short one, and then the question becomes, well, what do we do with that reading? Use it on Good Friday. It's perfect for Good Friday. That's the day you do that one. Okay? So you're not going to get away with that easily. Now let's go to Easter Day. Have a few minutes. Yeah. Easter Day. Now Easter Day, this liturgy is designed for those parishes that may not have an Easter vigil or have already had an Easter vigil. So this is like your Sunday morning. It's not the vigil, but the big thing in this one is the welcoming of the Easter candle. If you had the vigil, the candle will be lit. If you haven't had the candle, the vigil, you got to light the candle. And I've given you provision for that. Okay. The other thing is make a lot of the candle. Make a lot of the candle. And if the candle, the procession can come in, and when it comes time for the welcoming of the candle come. I know the candle's not going to work. Somebody's got to bring it. But if somebody could bring the candle in, either lit or not lit, that would be ideal. Draw attention to the candle and And then you sing, you need to sing an exalted. Don't worry about singing the really posh stuff. Get a simple tune that's a triumphant tune and sing it to something. Don't say it, don't say it. You need to sing, and you need to sing after the candle is done. So,
What tune is this one?
oh, I think I wrote about that. But there are simpler tunes. Did I write about it?
10 meter, 10, 10, 10, 10.
Yeah, 10, 10, 10, 10.
Okay.
Which is, church is one foundation, or one of those kind of things, Who in Newfoundland doesn't know church is one foundation?
Yeah.
Okay, so be sure to sing that. And then the other thing, just go through the liturgy as it always is. And when you get to the water, when you get to the reaffirmation of the baptismal covenant, if you got a font that's in the back of the church that you lay things on when you're not doing baptism, don't use that. Use a big container of water up front, and bless that water there, and make a great thing of the water. Don't have a bird bath. Don't have something like with a liter of water. Have lots of water. And for the brave, and I've done this, and believe me, it's not going to hurt you. And when the time, do asperges. Do the holy water over them all. And then, as one fellow said to me one time when I was being very, very generous with the water, he said, when are my glasses? He said, I didn't know what to do with the water on my glasses. But I said, okay, that's a theological question. Some PhD student will write a dissertation someday. All you got to do is wait. So don't worry about that. That's a little bit of, like there's a pleasantness to that. I like that. But when it comes...
What happens if you don't have your shaker?
Oh, easiest thing in the world. Yeah, just a little evergreen tree. Don't worry about, Almays and the $500 sterling silver ones. Don't mind them. Go out and anywhere on the West Coast, anywhere tall, far tall, make no difference. Just go out and cut off just an end of the Christmas trees, whatever you call them. Not the juniper, or the fern, yeah. And just not a bit, you're not going to drown them. It could be 6 or 7 inch, and make sure it's nice and fluffy. And then use that. Nice, quick flashes over. And anybody you want to particularly guess, but now, when you do it, now the reason I'm doing a lot about this water, because this water is really important. Now you're going to reaffirm the baptismal covenant that you've used every Sunday as a confession. Now you're going to use it as a reaffirmation. The other thing, then the liturgy follows through and does what it's supposed to do. When people come to communion, encourage them to come to the water, touch the water, and go to make their communion. Touch the water, go make their communion. There's a real thing about all of that. We have to connect our baptism with the Eucharist and living the faith. A good friend of mine used to say, and I think he was so right, when we come to Eucharist, we come dripping wet with the water of baptism. It is as if we have just been baptized and the water is still on us. And that's what you want to do on Easter Day. You want to draw them so that they touch them. And look, if you've got 150 in your church and 10 go and touch the water, do it. Next year there'll be 25. Do it. And then the liturgy follows. It's a straightforward liturgy. And the other thing you must do is you all, and I don't say must very often, or not, that often within an hour, say. But for the Eucharistic prayer, you really must stand on Easter Day. You must stand on Easter Day. You cannot allow them to kneel. You should never say the Eucharistic prayer kneeling anyway, but you should not allow them to to kneel on Easter Day, because we all stand in the risen life of Christ. In the ancient church, you would be fined. You would not be allowed, because you had to be seen to be up and alert. You've been baptized, you've been water of baptism, and you have to stand in solidarity. In actual fact, we do far better when we, if you were going to have a revolt, you wouldn't get everybody to kneel down. You get them all stand up. And we're more in solidarity standing than we are kneeling. There's a whole reason for that too. But please ask your congregation to stand, explain it to them. And a lot of the rationale that I've done in these liturgies, that's bulletin bits. You can put that in your bulletin just a little bit every now and again. Just get people to think. And you too someday will get on the pension plan. Now that's pretty well all that I want to say. And if you haven't been with me before, the thing I'm going to recommend to you is a really, really good book. It's called Table Manners, Liturgical Leadership for the Mission of the Church. Great book, $25, well worth it. And that is pretty well everything that I need to say. I think.
Well, it's very interesting and informative. Boys, I'm just going to take a moment to see if anyone who's online has a question or comment or observation.
Yeah, love to get your questions.
Hello.
Yeah.
This is Nath Larkin in Forto.
Yeah.
In the Advent, I did up a bulletin like you showed just now for Advent, and it was extremely time consuming because I downloaded the large pages and I had to type it over and make it smaller. And anyway, I downloaded the Easter Lenten Easter liturgies. And when you showed that how it was done in the college there into a bulletin form, is there any chance of getting a copy of that? Please.
Yeah, well, Father John is going to speak to that.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, just send a quick email to Dana here at the college, Queen's College email, and just ask Dana to send you the bulletin, a copy of the liturgies. And that's for everybody.
Yeah,
really because we sent out the big ones, but because some parishes cut and paste anyway.
Yeah.
Right. But ask Dana to send you, because we have them here and it works well. We did that as well for Lent this time around, or for Advent as well.
Worked well.
Yeah. Okay. Does that help you?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I understand fully what you're saying. Because now, you got to have a certain, like, I don't know if I could do that, but I know exactly what Nathan's saying. That having it already done is ideal. Perfect. Good question.
Any other questions or comments?
Here at the college, we're going to be celebrating all these liturgies in 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we do it, we start with Ash Wednesday, and then that next Monday will be Lent 1, Wednesday is not. The next Monday is Lent 2. But then finishing with, the bishop is going to be with us, our bishop's going to be with us for Easter Day. 2 weeks before Easter.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, till Easter Day.
And so we're going to get him to do Easter Day.
Sure.
So it'll be good.
But it will be, well, come along and set them yourself. You want to kind of same in action here, participate. But it's been good. The experiences and at the tail end of it, John, would probably do like we did last year when we had the debriefing on them, because it's informative. Huh?
Yeah. Now, Craig.
Hi, yeah, I got a question here. That book that Father Boyd mentioned, Table Manners, who is the author?
Oh, yeah. Simon, Simon, Reynolds, Reynolds.
Thanks. No, just a comment. I was nodding my head many times there as you went through the rationale for the Palm Passion Sunday thing, because I found before we began triumphant and then we were mournful and then we went back to triumphant.
Yeah.
And I think theologically that works better. And as well, the standing up, I like that idea as well, right? You know, it's action, it's moving forward, right? Very, very good.
Craig, this table manners, I got mine on Amazon.ca.
Okay, thanks. I'll
Yeah,
have a
no
look
problem.
for that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it from here.
If you want to set up at one of the flea markets in Florida to sell some of this stuff, I'm sure you could get a booth there, right?
Well, actually, you know, in my travels here and back in Newfoundland, it's amazing. I was down here and I was at a flea market and I got all these wonderful books on that they use for liturgy, like back here, say 50, 75 years ago, both in the Catholic tradition and the Anglican tradition. So you never know what I could find.
Yeah. Okay, folks, we'll ask one more time. Anyone with a question or comment?
Yes, I have one more question, Reverend
Yes, Nate?
Morgan Nathlarkin here. I have in my possession the booklet, Let Us Give Thanks. And on Easter, I'd like to do something a little shade different, and that is to make the Eucharist Prayer. Has that been done by the clergy before?
Yeah, what do you mean, real bread?
To make your own bread.
Yes. Now, that's acceptable. You don't even need permission to do that.
Okay.
What I would suggest about that is that there are recipes to use, which makes the bread a little bit heavier and the texture. And sometimes people, students did it here for years and years and years. It depended on the nature of the student body at the time. So there are some recipes that you can get that uses rye bread or a very light whole wheat.
Yes.
And that seems to be a different texture. Now, and then you don't, make it look like a bread. But the one thing we found here at the college, because students used to do this, you need to make it with the recipe so it's a little bit tough and tearing up in that. And then people have more than crumbs. But if you're going to do that, don't freeze the bread.
Okay.
Because I tell you that what happened was students would make up a batch and they'd use on Monday or Tuesday, whenever we were doing a Eucharist, and then they would freeze the rest. What we found is that once that kind of bread is frozen, you cannot tear it the same for the Eucharist. Yeah, there's something about freezing it. So it has to be fresh.
And you don't make it like we make loaves of bread. You're talking about a circular bread.
You can make it, well, you can make a loaf if you want. I mean, you can make whatever
Does
way
it
you
be
want.
unleavened?
Huh?
Unleavened?
Unleavened, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not going to rise.
So you don't use yeast in it, so it's not going to have the,
No.
yeah, it would make it in the tree bond stuff that you get at Manna.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that
One of the things that I noticed that people would do sometimes when they make their own would be, it would actually be almost about
like
pancake or, a bagel type of a thing, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, they would sometimes score it so that it would be easier to.
That's why you can score it.
Yeah.
Now, if you went in online, you should be able to find a bit about that, making bread for Holy Communion or something like that. But you know something? Even if you got a few questions, don't stop not doing it. Do it. And you'll learn from your experience. I think it's an excellent idea.
Okay, folks, we're going to wrap it up there now because we've been a little bit over time, but it's very interesting. Any other questions? Or did you have a question?
Vernon have a question? You got a question, Vernon?
No. Gone.
Oh, I guess it's good. Tracy and
Tracy.
Naz.
Yeah.
Greg, Debbie. Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you, Boyd. This was very worthwhile and inspiring, and it just shows that the, understanding and appreciating the rationale for why we do things It also shows how many things have just been held over and there's no rationale for them other than that they're held over. And that alone shouldn't be the reason for doing things. But there's a richness to the liturgy, especially when you take the time to prepare it well and to think about it, to appreciate the awesome dynamic that the season of Lent gives us as we move through these deeper spiritual movements and celebrate them properly in liturgy. So, boy, thanks for doing this. Thanks for sharing all this work that you've done with the church and with us at Queen's and being able to put it out for as a reader source in the 3 dioceses. So, thanks for that.
You're very welcome.
Best of luck, folks. Have a good day in spite of the weather that we're getting out there now. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father Boyd.
Thank you. Bye.
See you.
Take care.
Okay, take care.